Welcome to Oxford News This Week. I'm Elgin Nichols. This week, news anchor Terry Stiles is on vacation. In this week's news, what was the outcome of Oxford's August primary election? And learn why Oxford's VFW commander is the real deal. Stay tuned and learn more about these stories and others. The Oxford News begins right now. The 29-year-old Leonard man, John Oetjens, was discovered dead in his pickup truck at a local business parking lot. Oakland County Police reported that the man had a previous history of drug use. A brown substance was found in his vehicle and sent to a police lab to be analyzed, and his body was scheduled for an autopsy. Oakland County Sheriff's deputies were dispatched to Oxford High School on a complaint of trespassing. School officials reported that a woman had climbed a fence to enter the football field. When deputies arrived at the site, she told them that she was not trespassing. Deputies explained that when she went over the fence, she was indeed trespassing. She was given a citation and released. Oxford Village Police received a call from a bar on Washington Street that a husband and wife were unruly, and when asked by the owner to leave, they refused. When officers arrived, they quickly helped to resolve the dispute, however. Then police assisted the husband and wife to get safely back to their home. A woman was issued a citation for leaving the scene of an accident after her car ran into a building on South Washington Street. No reason was given for the cause of damage or why she left the scene. The issue continues under investigation. The Oxford primary election is over. To provide you a quick local summary by a large margin, Oxford residents rejected a proposal for a new $20 million community center. Also, a millage proposal to run the operation was turned down. And although Addison Township residents turned down the NOTA proposal by a very small margin, residents of Oxford and Orion Townships both voted in favor of a millage for North Oakland transportation. NOTA provides bus services for residents who would otherwise not have a method of low-cost transportation for work, medical appointments, and shopping. On another note, local resident and current State House Representative Republican Brad Jacobson was voted by majority vote in the primary to again be the Republican candidate in November's election. You may recall in last week's news story that two men, Alan Smith from Indiana and Jacob McGraw of Milford, Michigan, were arrested while protesting with 15 others against the Canadian-based Enbridge Pipeline and Oil Company. Enbridge is currently constructing a new pipeline through Addison and Oxford Townships. Well, this week, a Rochester Hills District Court judge acquitted the two men of all charges. The court agreed with the men that they were within their rights to peacefully protest without interrupting the business. The protest was over a 843,000-gallon oil spill caused by an Enbridge oil line rupture in Marshall, Michigan 4 years ago. Jim Hubbard, a 69-year-old Orion Township resident who serves as Oxford's Veterans of Foreign Wars VFW Post 334 commander, was recently named All-American Team Commander for all of Michigan. Back on August 17, 1967, Jim was in command of a 12-man Army team that got pinned down by Vietnam enemy forces. The Viet Cong greatly outnumbered his platoon and was overrunning his troops under his command. To allow his men to get to safety, Hubbard single-handedly attacked the enemy head-on. Despite suffering devastating wounds, Jim continued his aggressive assault on the enemy, holding his ground until reinforcements arrived. On that day, Hubbard was prepared to give the ultimate sacrifice for the safety of his men. The result of that siege resulted in the loss of his right arm and right hip, multiple shrapnel wounds in his back, and injuries that required over 27 surgeries. Today, Jim Hubbard is an honorable and respected hero in his community. Jim received the Purple Heart, Silver Star for saving his men's lives, the Bronze Star and Oak Leaf Clusters for other Vietnam battles that he was involved in. So, if you young folks are seeking a hero or someone to emulate, don't look for them in movies or television. In Oxford and Lake Orion, you really don't have to look far. You have a true hero, and he's the spirit of America, the real deal, Jim Hubbard. Last week, a prized employee retired from the Oxford Leader. Viewers most likely wouldn't recall ever seeing her face in the paper or seeing her name in print, but I'll bet you have seen her creativity. She is Kathy Shantz. Kathy worked for the Leader newspaper production department for 23 years, where she professionally designed thousands upon thousands of advertising layouts for the paper. Kathy was the go-to person, the person that salespeople, fellow production staff, and bosses too, and reporters and editors all went to when they needed help and advice. Although sometimes overwhelmed with responsibilities, she always did her job with total professionalism and a smile and great attitude. When asked what will she miss the most after retirement, she replied, the people. That's the Oxford News this week. If you would like to learn more about these stories and others, stop by your local store and pick up a copy of the Oxford Leader newspaper. Coming up on OCTV, Oxford Local Sports with Andy Curtis, Oxford School News with John Oetjens, and join us with Auto Talk and Science in the News with Dave Kenny. Thanks to Oxford and Addison News. Remember, OCTV always brings your programs closer to home. I'm Elgin Nichols. Always be kind to your friends and neighbors, and thanks for watching.
You're watching Oxford Community Television, keeping it local.
Welcome to this edition of Auto Talk. I'm Dave Kenny, and these stories are taken from the publication Automotive News. In our first story, the new Chevrolet Colorado and GMC Canyon midsize pickups will be priced about $8,000 to $10,000 less than the comparable equipped models of their larger showroom siblings, the Silverado and Sierra. That could come as a welcome news to Chevrolet and GMC dealers who have been hoping for a comfortable price spread between General Motors midsize and full-size pickups, giving U.S. truck buyers a clear choice. The base 2015 Colorado, to be launched this fall as an all-new model following a 2-year hiatus, will carry a sticker price of $20,995, including $895 for shipping, according to partial pricing information released by GM. The base Colorado, which is available in extended and crew cabs, is $5,575 less than the cheapest Silverado available, a regular cab work truck with a 4.3-liter V6 engine. A 3.6-liter V6 rated at 305 horsepower and 269 pounds-feet of torque comes standard on the 4-wheel drive crew cab Colorado and Canyon models and on 2-wheel drive crew cabs with a longer 6-foot bed. Waiting for that one. And still at GM, General Motors will launch more cars and light trucks with diesel engines in the United States in the coming years. Speaking at the 2014 Management Briefing Seminar, Steve Kiefer, GM's Vice President of Global Powertrain, said diesels in cars and light trucks could grow to 10% of the market in the United States by 2020. GM's lone diesel car in North America, the Chevrolet Cruze, carries an EPA rating of 46 miles per gallon, and has met GM's sales expectations. The only other diesel GM offers in the United States is the Duramax V8 engine, optional in heavy-duty Chevrolet and GMC pickups. The next diesel engine coming is slated for the 2016 model year, a 2.8-liter 4-cylinder that will be available in the Chevrolet Colorado and Canyon midsize pickups. But more are coming, Kiefer said. Torque, not horsepower, will be the more important measure of performance in the years ahead. Horsepower is a measurement of a vehicle's top speed, while torque, important for pickups, is felt as the force of acceleration and the ability to pull heavy loads. And over in China, China ordered a nationwide overhaul of safety practices at factories handling explosive materials following a fatal blast at an auto parts factory near Shanghai, the official Xinhua news agency reported. The recent explosion at a factory owned by Kushan Zhongrong Metal Products Corporation killed 75 and injured 185 people on August 4th, according to Xinhua. An initial investigation showed the factory buildings of the factory, an indirect supplier of General Motors, failed to meet safety provisions with overcrowded workshops and a shortage of equipment to remove metal dust, Xinhua said. President Xi Jinping demanded harsh punishment for those responsible for the explosion and sent a team to oversee rescue work and investigate the accident, according to Xinhua. The accident, China's deadliest industrial disaster of the year, underscores calls by Premier Li Keqiang for safety improvements in the world's second largest economy. And on the supplier front, many of the cars on sale today carry as many cameras as a cluster of paparazzi, pointing 5 or more lenses at lane lines and blind spots to assist drivers. Even inexpensive cars, such as the Nissan Versa Note, are becoming shutterbugs. For less than $20,000, the hatchback can be bought with an around view parking aid that patches several camera views into a simulated bird's eye image. The next step, experts say, could be cameras that observe the driver instead of the road. Automakers and suppliers are exploring using cameras to fight distracted driving and to unlock smartphone-style features for car owners. It could be a windfall for suppliers such as Aeson CK, Continental AG, and Delphi Automotive, all of which have demonstrated driver monitoring systems that use cameras to detect whether a driver is paying attention. One early adopter is Toyota Motor Corporation, which first equipped cars with eye monitor technology in 2008 and now offers its alert monitor in the Lexus LS, GS, and GX models, the company said. But inward-facing cameras have other uses. In the long run, if autonomous driving becomes a reality, even video conferencing could be viable. Victor Canseco, managing director of global sales at Delphi, said the supplier's anti-distraction system could synthesize data from a handful of sources, including cameras inside and outside the car, to decide how much the driver can handle. The human mind can manage only so much of a workload, Canseco said. The workload is increased by heavy traffic, bad weather, or having more passengers in the car. By plugging all those data points into a formula, Delphi thinks it can gauge a driver's capabilities and lock out some of the most mentally taxing features. The company expects the first model using its system to go on sale around 2016. Well, that's all for this edition of Auto Talk. I'm Dave Kenny, and as always, may the wind be at your back as you cruise down life's highways. Stay tuned to Oxford Community Television, and we'll be right back.
I'm Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard and former Red Wing great Joey Koser reminding you to follow the rules regarding boater safety. Always operate at safe speeds, avoid alcohol, and wear a life jacket. Don't let a great day on the water be ruined by bad decisions.
You are watching the Michigan American Legion's Station of the Year for the 5th year in a row, Oxford Community Television.
The moment.
I'll never forget that moment.
That changed my life.
At that moment, it hit me. This is why I joined the Guard. We're soldiers, always ready to protect our country. But we've also got communities. Family, friends, neighbors who count on us. I couldn't believe it. I just saved a life to somebody from my hometown.
See what it means to be a citizen soldier at NationalGuard.com.
I'm John Oetjens, and welcome to the Oxford Wildcats School Update. If you've been watching the Michigan legislature, you know that the Michigan Educational Assessment Program is going through a transition. Assistant Superintendent Dr. Jim Schwarz walks us through the latest changes to the MEP test.
So they're going to be testing in a window from April to June, and when you test within that window is dependent upon the grade level you're in. Also different with the test this year, outside of just moving them from fall to spring, is also going to be the method to which they're taken. Students previously have taken paper pencil exams, that is all now moving to online exams. So students will be foregoing the pencil paper and now completing their exams online, which has benefits in terms of how quickly we receive results.
The timing of next year's test is important. Dr. Schwarz continues.
Being that the tests are given in the spring, it's going to measure the standards and benchmarks for that school year. Previously, when we had given the test administration in the fall, it was really testing the prior year's standards and benchmarks. So if you were a third grader who was being tested in October, you were really being tested on the second grade benchmarks and standards. Now, with a spring testing period, they're going to test based on the standards and benchmarks for the grade level they're in.
And that's just for this school year. There's more to come.
At the end of this coming school year, the Michigan Department of Education has to put out for bids for what testing will occur in the 2015-16 school year. And that will be a test that will be more toward the national curriculum, the Common Core curriculum, at least in English language arts and math. And that could include smarter balance testing, that could include the PARCC exam, again, both of which are our national exams. Anything's possible at that point in terms of what will be adopted.
Assistant Superintendent Dr. Jim Schwarz. The Oxford International Residence Academy is expecting 46 students from abroad later this month, and they could use your help. Host families are needed. Jill Lemonde is one of the directors of the Academy, and she tells us of some of the most common home situations that welcome these students in.
We've had families where their parents, the parents' children are adults now, and they're retired, and they just kind of felt like their home was empty, and they wanted to open it up to a Chinese student. We've had families where they have elementary schoolers who are in the Chinese program, and they wanted someone to practice their Chinese with, or someone to really learn the culture from. And we've had high school students who wanted another sibling, or again wanted practice with the language and the culture. I think Oxford as a community is really progressive in that we understand the global citizenship piece of education and really recognize that this is one great big world and we're all pretty connected. So a lot of our families have students that are in language programs. And so you're aware, we are opening up the program. This year we're taking our first Mexican student. We have opened it up to our sister school in Mexico, and we hope to receive more students from Mexico. And we also have independent students. We had a student from Russia last year come through the program. So it's not just a Chinese program, it's just that's where such a majority of our students are at this time.
You can reach Jill at 586-764-0241. More on that program later on Schooling Around. In case you missed it, Saturday, August 2nd was Lone Ranger Day in Oxford. Various events took place, including a parade which featured the Oxford High Marching Band. They managed to recruit band alumni, 31 of them to be exact, to march along. And word has it they all remembered their right from their left. That's the Oxford Wildcats School News for this week. Dave Kenny is next with Science in the News, followed by Andy Curtis with Sports. This is Oxford Community Television, keeping it local.
You're watching Oxford Community Television, keeping it local.
On out for Friday night fish at the Oxford American Legion Hall. It's delicious.
We love the Legion. They have great fish and good family fun.
American Legion fish fry. It's awesome. And the drinks are good, the food is good, the service is awesome.
So the Tigers lost again on Sunday, this time 6-5 in a 19-inning, 6-hour and 37-minute marathon game in Toronto against the Blue Jays, dropping their lead to only half a game in the Central. David Price was the first starting pitcher featured in the day, pitching a shutout into the sixth with a 5-0 lead. Then after a 2-run Toronto homer, Phil Coke came into the game, and after a couple of ground balls and some bad defense, the score was all of a sudden 5-4. The game finally ended with a Jose Bautista bases loaded hit off starter Rick Porcello, who came in for the last 2 innings. No, actually, I think we have some highlights from yesterday's game. So to make matters worse, over the weekend, Anibal Sanchez got hurt for maybe a month with a strand muscle in his side, and newly acquired reliever Joaquim Soria might be gone for 2 weeks with an injury to his oblique. So, should Tiger fans panic? Yes, I know I am, and even with the losses of Sanchez, the Tigers of course still have a very good starting pitching rotation, but the bullpen problems, defense, and offense seem to be getting worse, not scoring a run in the last 15 innings of Sunday's game. Makes no sense, right? Because the team has scored the 5th most total runs in all of the majors with 528 and is tied for second best team on base percentage at .328. But for anyone who has been watching the team in the last few months knows that all these stats and numbers are not resulting in wins. Let's talk about some football, though. That always puts a smile on people's faces, and we got to see a sneak peek of the new look Lions Saturday night as they took on the Cleveland Browns in the first preseason game of the year, getting the very first win for new head coach Jim Caldwell, 13-12. Now, this means absolutely nothing, but it is football and gives us a little taste of what the new coaching staff has in mind for the team, notably the use of 2 tight ends and more running and power plays from the fullback. Matt Stafford, Reggie Bush, and the offensive starters only played 1 series, and Calvin Johnson sat out the entire game, but Stafford went 2 for 4 with a whopping 18 yards. 14 of those went to a completion to new Lion Golden Tate. First-round pick Eric Ebron had a 2-yard catch out of 4 pass attempts. And on the defensive side, second-round pick and rookie linebacker Kyle Van Noy was used as the 4th linebacker and nearly missed a sack on Cleveland QB Johnny Manziel and caused a fumble on a pass that was later ruled incomplete. What we did take away from the televised scrimmage, though, was Lions backup quarterback Kellen Moore, who made a good case for the number 2 QB role, going 11 for 13 with 121 yards and a touchdown. So getting you ready for the upcoming football season, here's today's sports vocabulary word. Fullback. The fullback is an offensive football position in the backfield and is one of the 2 running back positions in the game. Fullbacks are usually very large players whose duties include power running and blocking for the QB and other running back. The Lions' most famous fullback is Corey Schlesinger, who spent his entire 12 years with the Lions, retiring in 2006. I'm Andy Curtis, and remember, you can catch all of our broadcasts of your favorite Oxford High School Park Rec League and now upcoming high school football games between 1 and 6 on Saturdays and Sundays right here on OCTV, or as always, check us out online under the programs section of OCCTV.org. And of course, this is your community station, so if you have a sports idea, shoot me an email at andrewcurtis23@gmail.com and put OCTV Sports in the subject line. That was all the sports news you need to know. Thanks for watching and have a great day.
Discover the wonderful surprises of local shopping. Watch Let's Take a Walk with Susan Bork or Andy Curtis, weekdays at 10:30 and 6:30, keeping it local. You're watching Oxford Community Television, keeping it local.
Welcome to Science in the News. I'm Dave Kenny, and these stories are taken from the publication New Scientist. In our first story, the waters of North America's Lake Erie turned lurid green recently thanks to a bloom of toxic bacteria. The bloom has now receded and the water is drinkable again, but the challenge is how to stop it happening again. The blue-green cyanobacteria Microcystis aeruginosa built up in the western end of the lake, which is the main source of drinking water for Toledo, Ohio. The bacterium produces a toxin called microcystin, which causes skin rashes, abnormal liver function, diarrhea, vomiting, and numbness and dizziness. Dangerous levels of microcystin forced Toledo to turn off the water supply. This is not a new problem for Lake Erie. Such blooms were common in the 1960s, mostly because of poor sewage systems dumping phosphorus into the lake. This flow of phosphorus was cut right back in the 1990s, and the ecosystem recovered. But over the last decade, the blooms have become increasingly common again. Phosphorus running from fertilizers is running into the water and feeding the bacteria, and invading zebra mussels are eating the bacteria's competitors. To prevent blooms, Ohio must stem the flow of phosphorus, says Jeffrey Rutter of Ohio State University in Columbus. Farmers should test soil to help them only use as much fertilizer as is necessary and apply it when planting so unused phosphorus isn't lying around. And on the nature front, some bears can have their cake and eat it too. Grizzly bears become diabetic, that's in quotes, during hibernation and then recover when they're awake. Lynn Nelson of Washington State University in Pullman and her colleagues investigated insulin activity in tissue samples taken from 6 grizzly bears over the course of a year. As the bears put on weight in preparation for the winter, they responded normally to insulin, which prevents the breakdown of fatty tissue. But during hibernation, insulin effectively stopped working. That is a symptom in people with type 2 diabetes, in which high fat levels in the blood induce insulin resistance. This insulin resistance allows the bears to break down their fat stores throughout hibernation, when they will not eat, drink, or defecate for up to 7 months. They survive on their fat before waking up and begin to respond normally to insulin when they start to feed again. The results suggest there is a chemical pathway involved in altering sensitivity to insulin. This pathway could hold the key to developing treatments for type 2 diabetes. Wow. And in space, Rosetta is the sexiest space mission that has ever been, says European Space Agency mission scientist Matt Taylor. He was speaking as the Rosetta probe finally arrived at Comet 67P Churyumov-Gerasimenko after a 10-year mission. Others were scarcely more reserved. It is the most crazy bonkers superstar comet in the solar system, said ESA Senior Scientific Advisor Mark McCorrigan. They have won the gold medal for this comet. It is an astonishing object. Rosetta has traveled 400 million kilometers to reach 67P and now begins a 16-month mission to study it in detail. Cameras on board the probe have already revealed 67P to be a comet of 2 halves, with a shape some have compared to a rubber ducky, and there is much more to learn. Comets are the frozen leftovers from the formation of the solar system, so they can teach us about the origin of water and other molecules necessary for life on Earth. The probe executed its final maneuver, firing its thrusters to match 67P's speed. Roughly 23 minutes later, ESA technicians at the European Space Operations Center in Darmstadt, Germany, received confirmation that everything had gone smoothly. Since the comet is only around 4 kilometers wide, its gravity is very low, meaning Rosetta will initially have to travel in an unusual triangle-shaped orbit. It will start at a distance of 100 kilometers in order to learn more about 67P's weird shape before moving in for a closer look. What a wonderful moment. We've been there, we've arrived, 10 years we've been in the car waiting to arrive at the scientific Disneyland, says McCogran. Now, the ESA team must identify a landing site for Philae, a small probe that has ridden on Rosetta and will touch down on the comet surface later this year and drill 27 centimeters into its surface. Rosetta and Philae are equipped with a total of 21 scientific instruments set to analyze the comet as it approaches the sun, heating up and releasing gas to form a lengthy tail right up until August next year, when it reaches the closest distance to the sun. It's going to be an awesome ride. Stay tuned, says Taylor. Well, that's it for this edition of Science in the News. I'm Dave Kenny. Stay tuned to Oxford Community Television, and we'll be right back.